All right, we're back to do one more step in the completion process for the gravy slash sauce for the turkey gravy. Okay. Our gravy, or excuse me, our stock has reduced about 50% now, and I'm getting ready to make what we call a little beurre mayonnaise, which is flour and butter or oil that isn't really cooked, just mixed together, okay? And we're going to use that as the thickening agent for the gravy, okay? So I have a little melted butter here, and of course you can get more information about the roux and the thickening agents because you don't have to use roux. You can use cornstarch or arrowroot or mashed potatoes if you want in your gravy. But for today, we're going to make it with the roux, which is equal parts butter and flour mixed together, or oil, okay? So I have some all-purpose flour here, and I got a little bit of melted butter. I'm going to dump it together. I don't have to measure this because I put the right amount of flour in, and then I know when I get to the right texture of the roux that I have the right amount of flour in because it reaches a certain texture. You can always add a little bit extra of the flour if you wanted to, which is what I'm going to do right there, okay? Let me shut that off. Now this is what we call beurre mayonnaise, okay? That is uncooked roux, all right? So we're going to add the roux right in to the reduced stock. And I'm going to whisk it in. And we're going to give this a few minutes to thicken up. And at this point, this is when, here, Richard, come up to me now. At this point, when you're reducing this sauce, the skimming process is much more important because now all of these impurities from the flour have been added to this stock. And so now there are a lot of things that are not soluble with water anymore that are in here. I mean, it was fully skimmed out and cleansed, as I referred to it earlier, prior to adding the roux. But now we just added some stuff to the stock that needs to be skimmed out again. So we're going to skim this here as it's reducing. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And I'll bring you back to this in about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes as it starts to accumulate scum. And I'll show you how I'm removing that. And then we'll probably at that point go right into the finishing of the sauce. And we'll talk about the butter and the cream being added. Okay? We'll be right back. Let's get rid of that non-TV towel. All right, you ready?
Perfect.
Okay. The finishing of the turkey gravy. Okay. I changed the saucepan. It was a little too big. Got it into a smaller pan so I could get the scum to accumulate along the side of the pan. Besides, you don't want to cook 2 quarts or 1.5 quarts of sauce or gravy in an 8-quart pan because there's problems associated with that, of course, that are covered in a different video, which I don't want to get into right now. But if you come down here to the sauce, I can show them how I had the saucepan sitting on the burner in such a way as that it caused a turbulence within the sauce itself to force all the scum, which is what this is. These are the insoluble particles. And I've already removed a little bit of them since we last came in and shot on this. They're removed, and that's part of the cleansing of the sauce. And that never really changes for any sauce that you might be making, okay? Now, I tasted the sauce a little bit already, and it tastes fine. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the basic finishing process for this sauce. Now, right here, I have a strainer, and I have a large bowl so you can see this process a little bit more easily. We're going to strain the gravy. Or I suppose we may have to call it sauce, but I think traditionally we want to call this gravy because this is a Thanksgiving kind of thing, okay? And now we're going to slide this over here a little bit. All right, now those mushrooms, just like all vegetables that are used inside of sauces to extract flavor, are kind of void of color and texture now. Although you could keep them in there, I generally would take them out. And if I wanted mushrooms in my gravy, I'd saute some more fresh ones so they were kind of nice and just cooked looking and put them inside the gravy for garnish if I felt I wanted the mushrooms in there. But you can use the mushrooms in there, but I have a tendency to strain them out, and I think you need to understand that that's the most refined approach to doing it, not necessarily the most economical. But then again, some of these foods that we make require the extract of certain things that may not necessarily be economical all the time. So now we're going to cut back down to the gravy, Richard. Now we're going to add a couple of ounces of butter per quart. And that is probably about enough right there. This, of course, is an option for you if you'd like to add that. Now the recipe calls for cream to be reduced and added to that. Now the reason that is because we want the texture of the cream to be close to the texture of the sauce. But I think this sauce can take some regular cream that's unreduced added to it. You can also add some of your cream. Now it's starting to look a little bit more like turkey gravy. Now, I'm going to take a taste of that real quick. It tastes good, and this particular sauce does not need any more salt and pepper, and it's not over. It doesn't have any, there's no too much salt flavor in this gravy right now at all. For some reason, it just came out perfect without adding any more to it. So what I would do is, now you could store this and from the day before and reheat this, or you can just simply pour this into your gravy boat and you are good to go. Now, something I'd like to say about the texture of your gravy. Now, we have a lot of tendencies out there to have this be a little bit too thick. You'll notice how I made this. I didn't add what I think would be too much roux. I like the gravy to be a little bit more sauce-like. And remember, this particular gravy is more of a concentrated sauce, so you don't need probably as much. So having it be thinner in this particular case might be better because they're not getting larger amounts of it. When it's thicker, it has a tendency to stick to the food more, and when it's a little bit thinner, it has a tendency to run off. And the person who's eating their food with the gravy can then decide how much of the gravy they want to marry with each bite by washing it in it a little bit. Okay, so there's some turkey gravy, and I hope you enjoy it. This is kind of like the most natural way to make turkey gravy, and that is with the stock from the carcasses of the roasted turkey. So enjoy your gravy and have a great Thanksgiving too while you're at it, if that's what you're doing.